Continue our coverage now on World Environment Day. This year's theme is Beat Plastic Pollution. 500 billion disposable plastic bags are used worldwide every year. Half of that is used only once. Let's talk about it some more. We're joined this morning by Greenpeace Africa's Nhlanhla Sibisi. Nhlanhla, good morning.
Good morning.
And thanks for your time. And yes, it seems that plastic pollution has become the bane of our existence. It is a theme. It is something that we're losing the battle against, aren't we?
Well, in a way we can say we are, losing it, but I'd like to say that because of the global effort that we're having as part of Greenpeace, we are part of the global movement that's actually speaking to the issue of plastics. And we are actually working with quite a lot of partners in terms of addressing, creating the awareness and making it a point that we actually don't lose that battle, because it's one battle that we cannot lose, but because of the impacts, and unfortunately those impacts are on our immediate environment, including our oceans, etc. And we're making it a point that we don't lose that battle.
Let's just bring it home for a little bit, Nhlanhla. Let's tell South Africans exactly what this is doing to our environment and also our bodies, because it's our oceans, it's our fish, and you're putting that into your body. It's even your plant life. Tell us what's actually happening.
The problem with single-use plastics is that, a few examples is when you go to your retailers or your supermarkets, you actually get plastics that you'll just use once off. And most of that plastic ends up in the landfill sites. It ends up in our oceans, as we've seen quite a few examples now on different channels. And it ends up in our streams. And unfortunately, talking about the oceans, we see this vicious cycle where the plastics actually break down into smaller particles, and the fish actually eat it. They ingest, these particles. And we've also seen not only in the smaller fish that we eat, but also in the bigger fish that are having this problem, like your whales, your dolphins, etc. And we've seen quite a lot of examples where, when they are opened up after they've died or they've washed onto the beach, there's a lot of plastic that's actually in these animals because they ingest them. So this cycle that you are referring to, it's, at the end of the day, it's the single-use plastics that we are discarding that ends up in the ocean, and that cycle is that we also eat the very fish that are eating the plastics. So in a way, we are also ingesting plastics. So which is why, as Greenpeace Africa, we are saying that this cycle needs to be stopped. We need to look at alternatives, and alternatives do exist. And yes, we may accept that maybe some of the alternatives right now are a little bit more expensive, but we should actually start that movement where we move closer to getting those alternatives into place.
Well, in some of the articles I've read, and I've seen the comment that we as modern society have become addicted to plastic and we need to be weaned on. Are we addicted to plastic? I mean, South Africans, and considering we pay for our plastic bags most of the time when we are in a store, is it an addiction for us, that or we just don't care?
The unfortunate thing is that it's become a convenience. And I say a convenience in inverted commas because at some point in time we didn't really rely on that convenience. And the simple example is when you go to your supermarket and you are offered a plastic, you are very quick to take it because of the convenience of carrying those things. And yet we have other alternatives, like for instance, having your own bags, your own cotton bags, or it may even be recycled bags. Like at Greenpeace Africa, we have recycled bags that we are giving out to our volunteers and to our supporters, and we're saying that make it a habit that you always have those bags with you, so that when you go to your supermarket and they offer you a plastic and you say no. And in actual fact, we even have the alternative, as ordinary citizens, to say that I don't want the plastic, but I need you to offer me an alternative which is environmentally friendly. So even the responsibility rests on individuals like you and me when we go to our retailers and supermarkets to actually put pressure on those retailers and the supermarkets and say that we want alternatives that are friendly environment.
And I think, a lot of people might come out saying, listen, life is so busy, things are so hectic, I don't have time to remember to reuse them and throw them in the boot and take them out. If I'm going to reuse the plastic bags, I do that. I keep them in my boot as soon as I unpack and throw them back in. But it's just a few seconds of thought is all it takes, actually. It's just a few seconds of thought. So it's a matter of just making people more aware and putting out reminders. But when you come to the retailers, are they really playing the game? Are they?
We have a moral responsibility to actually say that, starting with us, we have to put that pressure on your retailers, on your corporates, and say why we want these alternatives. And by so saying, that's why I say that even Greenpeace as an environmental movement, we are actually creating this awareness and making it a point that now and again we keep on talking about these issues so that the individuals, will take responsibility, but also we are putting pressure on the corporates and the retailers and the supermarkets, etc. And we're saying to them that they can come up with, with alternatives. So we all have a responsibility to make sure that we do the right thing, because the moral obligation on our side as individuals and citizens is that the very environment in which we are living in, we rely on it. We rely on the oceans. We rely on the land that we're actually polluting. So it should start with the individual to say that I have a responsibility to put pressure where it should be put so that we correct this.
Just in your experience, you obviously are aware and you look for these things more than the ordinary citizen might, being part of Greenpeace. Do we have enough sort of recycle, what would you call them, the bins or the portals, whatever they are, generally for the public, for me to take my stuff and leave it somewhere where to a recycle bin? Are there enough of them? Because I battled to find one the other day.
The experience is that there are very few places and there are very few even office spaces, etc., which are actually doing that, and we commend them for that, by the way. But in general, in terms of having the right infrastructure in place, in your local government areas where most of the refuse is actually collected by the local government, we don't really have that. We do, however, see areas where they are doing sorting, like for instance in Diepsloot, they have a place where they do sorting, and there are people who are actually benefiting for that because they are able to sort the plastics and they're able to sell them. So we need to have the right legislation in place that's actually going to be governing these things to make sure that we also start sorting from home before we even take out our garbage. So the responsibility also falls on us, but also when the refuse is collected, we have to have that already sorted out. So and that infrastructure is actually needed.
Now, Dan spoke to Minister Edna Molewa a little earlier. She says there's going to be a Keep SA Clean campaign launched sometime in the future. They're waiting for a date for the President. Firstly, are you part of that? Have you had any input? And what would you like to see in this campaign? What would you like to see it include?
Well, we actually commend that campaign because it really speaks to the awareness that we are also championing, and it also speaks to the global movement itself in saying that each and every country should take responsibility for its own litter, for its own refuse, and we need to actually, and we would like to support the minister on that, because it's not that Greenpeace is always looking at faults from government. Whatever good solutions that they are coming up, we do support them, and we would like to see that happening, which is why also on the one hand we have our own platform, which is vuma.earth, where we have a platform that our supporters, our volunteers, and even the individuals can actually go and create petitions. The petitions where we are creating the awareness. We're also putting pressure on the necessary authorities to make things, to have things done. So in terms of that, yes, we are very supportive.
Well, I think the secret is to get to the children, because the children are often the ones to admonish their parents for the things that they do. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you so much.
Greenpeace Africa's Nhlanhla Sibisi.